My fellow Americans, Michiganders, those in Jackson, Lansing, Grand Rapids, and Detroit, thank you for tuning in to ACVN, the American Conservative Values Network, dedicated and committed to those precepts and principles that have made this nation great: the Constitution, Bill of Rights, Declaration of Independence, and the Emancipation Proclamation. Thank you for taking time out of your busy schedule from time to time to tune in to this program and listen to the discussions and dialogue in as much as we feel that what we are discussing pertaining to issues that affect all of us are pertinent to you as well as to all involved. Today I have with me the distinguished Andrew Barnett, running for president, recommended by the National Frederick Douglass Society, and of course bringing to bear many ideas that need to be reincorporated in the American political system pertaining to values, virtues, and morality that is the future and is the underpinning of the future of this nation. I want to welcome Mr. Andrew Barnett at this time to our program. Mr. Barnett.
Thank you for having me. Wonderful.
Thank you for taking time out of your busy schedule to come and be a part of this discussion and this program. Today we have with us on the circuit of the Republican ticket, and you're considered a conservative, running as a conservative. But there are approximately 8 or 9 candidates that are out there. The front runners are Mitt Romney, Newt Gingrich, and Herman Cain. These individuals seemingly are garnering the majority of the percentage of the GOP vote, which stands for, by the way, to our audience, for the Grand Old Party, the Grand Old Party vote. And many are prognosticating that Mitt Romney probably will be the nominee. You are running to raise the consciousness and to raise the bar in terms of discussions pertaining to the moral and social and virtuous aspects of society, things that are absent today, that have been extricated by the secular progressives and by the secular progressive institutions that have been hijacked by the doctrine of secular humanism, and that is anti-God, anti-Christian, anti-religious, anti-moral, anti-value. We want to allow you at this time to take the bulk of this program as you see fit, to introduce yourself to the audience, your credentials pertaining to your service in our country's military and protecting our borders, including Iraq, as well as your credentials in education and your political experience and background. Please take your time at this time. Mr. Andrew Barnett, God bless you.
Thank you. I'm so very happy to be here, and thank you for having me. My name is Andre Barnett. I hail from Zanesville, Ohio. I grew up in Zanesville. I stayed there until I was 17 years old. I went to Zanesville High School and graduated there. I later left and went to Tennessee, that is Austin Peay State University, for my initial college career. I left Austin Peay and went into the military, the U.S. Army, of which I served for 5.5 years, and left under a medical discharge after falling from a helicopter in Sarajevo, Bosnia. I left the military in 2000 and went to Management Technologies International, or Mantech, where I served as one of their engineers. I left there and became a global manager for Sprint, serving to support the NATO forces in Bosnia. Left Sprint. Amazing. And went into Vanell Corporation, a subsidiary of Northrop Grumman, as their senior network engineer, developing and implementing and supporting the new Iraqi Army Training Program Network. That was in Kirkuk, Iraq. Leaving Kirkuk, Iraq, I later went to DRS, Power and Control Technologies, working on the nuclear subs and carriers for the Navy. Leaving there, I went to General Dynamics, C4 Systems, which I still supported that nuclear endeavor in various parts of the U.S. at every port. Then I actually started my own company, Wise Dome Incorporated, and I have supported every branch of the armed forces, as well as various intelligence agencies, and some of the private sector as well, companies like IBM, large entities that deal with information technology and telecommunications. I decided to run for the presidency after a long, hard look at what was going on basically with my own family and friends and relatives. And it does seem a little bit like I may be self-centered in this thought, but we have to look at what's going on with our core families first. And that's how we can realize the shape of this nation. As we're watching the livelihoods and the living capacity for people in this nation degrade immensely, we have to take into account that the government has played a large role in this degradation. So when I looked at it and I saw that my family was not able to afford a lot of the things that they used to, of course, I've done well, and the Lord has blessed me immensely throughout my life and my career. So I'm able to give back and to help support my own family. Many others don't have those abilities. Many others don't have a way of escape, if you will. So I looked at my nieces, my nephews, my fiance, and her family, and I see that they're just not. They don't have the jobs that they used to. They don't have the home that they used to, and they don't have the security that they used to. These are major issues that really struck me. It's heartbreaking to see children in need. It's heartbreaking to see families being driven apart, all over money, all over the inability to live the American dream, if you will, to chase it, to pursue it, which we have that inalienable right to pursue it.
So in your thoughts, this administration, the Obama administration, has to some extent fallen off course with respect to job creation, with respect to regulation, tax policy that would help to stimulate growth in this country, and tax policy and regulation that would cause monies that have gone overseas that are being invested in areas that in fact are friendly to capital would come back to the United States, and by businesses pulling back several $1 trillion that are invested overseas into the coffers of our country would translate into them reinvesting and expanding their business footprint and creating more jobs and or giving more opportunities to the citizens and citizenry of America. You obviously then of the persuasion that there is a leadership vacuum in Washington and that the priorities are out of line. What'd you say?
I would say that it's more than a vacuum in Washington for leadership. We've lost leadership a long time ago. It didn't start with the Obama campaign. However, the Obama campaign is personifying this greatly, immensely. We've lost so many jobs due to the fact that we do have the highest corporate tax rate in the world. Many say the second highest, but we are in line for first. However, with a failing economy, joblessness numbers at all-time highs, this is not the time to be business unfriendly, if you will. In my plan that I put out, I basically laid out a solution that is all-encompassing. You see, it's not just the jobs that we're worried about. If the American public don't feel that the government is actually being loyal to them, then they're really not going to give back and put into the economy. We feel, I felt, I know with my own business, that the government was against me. Taxes, trying to make sure I'm current with all of the legislation that I have to put up with to keep my business running. It was very burdensome and money consuming, time consuming, personnel consuming. Revenue became very slim. So we have, and I have to look at it as mine being really a microcosm of our economy. So if we look at this today, our government can take specific action to bring jobs back. The plan that I have actually is looking at an increase of anywhere from 20 to 40 million jobs. We're not talking about 7 million or 11. We're talking about 20 to 40 million jobs. And the way we do this is by, first, we're going to have a negotiation with the corporations that are bringing these jobs back. We have to let them know that we are willing to bring down the corporate tax rate. And the numbers that I put in initially were 12%, first off. And that would bring us within percentage points of being the lowest in the world. Now, a lot of combative people from the left will say, well, you're just giving revenue to corporations, but that's not going to do anything to bring jobs back. They're just going to use the money to pay off executives and invest in other countries. Well, there's other parts of this plan that we have to look at. A series of tariffs on imports from countries that are putting high tariffs on our exports. This is going to level the playing field. Now, we've already heard businesses state openly that they would bring jobs back if the tax rate was 15%. At 12%, they'll begin creating new factories here in the U.S., manufacturing facilities, and that's going to expand job growth. One of the things that I've also said is we have to give back to the taxpayers, something that we don't do today. People here in the U.S. pay almost as much tax overall as people in Europe. People in Germany get free health care, free education. Mothers that have children don't have to go to work for 3 years. If they decide to go to work, fathers can stay at home for 3 years. We have nothing like this in the U.S. We pay almost as much taxes. In many studies that have been done, it shows that U.S. Taxpayers are paying 40% of their income in total in taxes, 45% in some instances. Germans pay right around 45 to 50%, and they're getting a lot more back than we are. So we have to give back to the taxpayers, and the only incentive that I have for a tax to the corporations is my premium, healthcare premiums package, and that means that if they will take on the burden of the premiums, not allowed to pass on in any way, shape, or form to their employees, I will give them 3% more tax cut than what they have currently. So that would take them down to 9%. Now at 9%, they're still making an enormously large amount of capital that they're going to be tax-free for the rest of it. Now, when we look at this scenario, you're going to create job growth, a large amount of job growth. We're not talking about 1,000 here or 1,000 there. Large amounts of job growth. We're also looking at allowing corporations to repatriate their funds back into the states without taxes, but we're going to do this with strings attached. We cannot allow them to repatriate their funds without investing in our infrastructure. We can't allow them to basically say, okay, we're going to repatriate our funds, but we're going to give it to our executives. That's not going to be acceptable to the American people. We've got to make sure that it's reinvested and instituted into our economic infrastructure. And at this point, we're going to be covering more people because the premiums package means that they're going to pay the health care premiums for the employees and their families. That means every person that's employed will have health care. Every family member of that person, immediate family, I don't mean mothers and fathers.
And you're speaking of health care that's being provided by the private sector.
That is correct.
Okay, not sponsored by the government, almost on the border of public option.
Well, that's the beauty of this. We're removing the government from it totally. You see, the government will never be able to negotiate as well as the private sector. So we have the corporations negotiate those rates that they're going to pay for those health care premiums. And with that being said, taking the government out of that negotiation process, we now can cut back on the size of our government. We don't need those negotiators anymore. We don't need those regulators anymore. The same group of individuals, the same agency that documents employees, legal employment, can document the health care being implemented in those institutions, in those corporations. We'll take those rates that are given, and we actually are going to have those published in GSA. And that is the acquisition vehicle that the government uses for all of its services. And it is the largest.
The acronym stands for Government Securitized Assets?
That's correct. And so the government is going to utilize that, and that means the cheapest or the lowest rate that's offered to any corporation has to be the one that's published in the GSA schedule. So that means we can cut at least 1/3 of all health care costs, because we're going to utilize those rates for Medicare, Medicaid, Social Security. All of those health care benefits that the government does provide is going to be provided through the GSA now.
And of course, you would keep Medicare and Medicaid in place so that those persons who are covered currently under the program would in fact not have to worry about losing such coverage.
That's correct.
In terms of regulation, much of what you're talking about is dealing with the changing of the application of regulation. And of course you've explained what departments that you think would be involved in this transitional implementation in the event that you were elected president and you were able to effectuate public policy in such a fashion. Having said that, then, what are your thoughts then in downsizing government across the board? What agencies in government would you, if elected president, prioritize to downsize and to right-size so that we could shrink the size of government and we could shrink the expenses or the spending of government and bring it in line with the revenues that will be generated by creating jobs and by your revised, should I say, tax structure?
Well, the first thing is the Internal Revenue Service. Number one, we can downsize the Internal Revenue Service after we simplify the tax code. And that is all legislation that is only beneficial to certain sectors, certain business sectors. The energy sector, for one, the financial sector. The next agency is the EPA, the Environmental Protection Agency. We really have to streamline that agency. There's been too much fault in that agency in the past, in the recent past. A lot of fraud, waste, and abuse throughout that agency, and complacency. As we've spoken about before, education. The Department of Education, I would definitely right-size. That particular agency would be remodeled or abolished altogether. We have got to remove the secular curriculum that they've put in place for our students. That's giving them a linear thought process and making them less competitive on a global scale. And we have got to be able to think clearly, and our students have to get back to basics. We can't remove subject matter such as cursive writing, handwriting, long math, science. These are all areas that our children need to have an advanced education in. We don't need to cut back and say, okay, we're going to let computers do all of this. We need to take out the immorality issues. We've got, in fact, in New York next year, it's possible that they're going to be teaching bestiality and sexual education. They'll be teaching homosexuality in education. And this is from the 5th grade on. Sending children out to take part in educational field trips where they have to take down the names and the certain criteria covered with sexual protective devices, and bring this back to school and write essays on it. This is not conducive to a good education or promoting the values that are going to complement what parents are teaching at home. Instead, we're contradicting it in schools. And we're kind of wondering why our students aren't learning as much. Well, they have to deal with 2 different sides of the story, or 2 different sides of the education, one from home and church, and then the other from school. So those are the 3 top agencies that I would decrease in size initially. And as I said, any agency that's dealing with the regulation of health care, we could basically eliminate.
Well, at least you remember the 3, much to the contrary of Rick Perry the other day when I attended the debates in Oakland, at Oakland University in Oakland County. With regard to education, when you talk about linear education, which seems to be education focused not on analytical thinking, critical thinking, but on social integration. It seems to be the emphasis in linear education is socialization, social studies, social science, psychology, and other social focuses that have nothing to do with learning and innovation and creativity and the sciences. And there also seems to be the abandonment by academia of the historicity surrounding where we've come from as a nation and American exceptionalism, and any consideration for the Founding Fathers and what their view was for the future of this country. Many of those liberals seem to think that the Constitution and Bill of Rights and Emancipation Proclamation and other documents are evolving. They're living documents that are subject to interpretation of the generations that proliferate through time. So your thoughts on how you would in fact eradicate the linear focus and bring back to the classroom, particularly the public school sector, the critical thinking and the analytical thinking that is necessary in math, science, in technology, and in other branches pertaining to education, math, science, literature, history, technology, and so on and so forth?
Well, I will say this. Number one, when we're looking at patriotism in our school system, the acknowledgement of American exceptionalism, the first thing is I would reinstitute saying the pledge first thing in school, the first part of the day, and I mean the full pledge with one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. That's the first part, because I believe that if we actually have we're showing respect and admiration for this country. We're showing respect and admiration for the citizenship of this country and for the leadership of this country. That's the first thing that we need to do. Patriotism is a huge part. That's really going to instill some of those values right off the bat. Number two, we have to stop focusing so much on keeping God out of schools. That's one of the issues that perplexes me today as we begin to really fall off the path of implementing a value infrastructure in our children, teaching the values that are going to be required for them to raise their own families, to respect themselves, and to actually want to learn more, to do more for their environment, for their communities, and for themselves. That's something that we have to really think about right now, and that is our faith plays a huge role in our education, in our decision making. And that's something that we cannot neglect or deny. We never could. And
Agreed.
If we looked at the past 60 years, since the Department of Education was brought into place.
Under Jimmy Carter.
That's correct. We've seen that this degradation has accumulated and has become more rapidly expansive in our education system. Our children began to be less and less competitive, again, in maths and sciences. And we began to see the instituting of drugs, of gang violence, of student violence within the schools on a rapid increase.
We lost control.
We totally lost
control. And of course, academia, the academic environment is not conducive to learning in our public schools in many, in particular, urban centers.
Correct.
Some of your more suburban schools where it seems that there are two-family arrangements that make up the community, and parents are actively involved in choosing the curriculum and helping to develop the curriculum on the career path and the study skills development of their children, in helping to direct them as to where they will go in life and what professions and careers they would choose. To some extent, suburban America has mastered this science. In East Lansing, for example, and Okemos, when I finished high school there before I matriculated to Michigan State University, it was interesting to find out that upon arriving in East Lansing High School, in comparison to the urban school that I was attending prior to coming to East Lansing. East Lansing offered over 200 different classes. Inkster High School offered like 15 to 16. Mm-hmm. There was extraordinary disparity between those two institutions, even though they were both public schools. The parents were very involved in choosing curriculum because many of the parents whose children attended East Lansing High School were on the Board of Trustees at Michigan State University. Mm-hmm. They were on the Board of Regents at the local community college. They were on the Board of Education for the school system in general, and they were involved in writing curriculum to help walk their children through the public school system, beginning in elementary school, straight into or directly into the institutions that they would have to attend or that would choose to attend mm-hmm. upon graduation from the public school sector. So I was fascinated with the long-term view and plan that was put in place by many of those public schools. I had never seen anything like it in urban America, and urban America, in terms of its school systems, have gotten worse than they were when I graduated in 1976. So that's something that John Engler, when he was the governor, tried to address by implementing what became known as school choice, mm-hmm. that you can pick and choose to take your children out of a failing school and put them into a school that had a good track record of educating its students. And my understanding was that this was a great benefit and provided a great opportunity to parents who really wanted to see their children succeed and were involved mm-hmm. in planning and directing their children's progress and success in the public school sector, hoping that they would successfully matriculate to their post-education and get their degrees and be able to compete. Also, unemployment, my understanding is among college graduates around 5 to 6% versus 14 to 16% for the rest of America. Right. Your thoughts on bridging that gap? 14 million people are unemployed as we speak.
Let me first go back to the education mm-hmm. Topic. There, we have to look at one other thing. Parents' involvement, which you hit on, mm-hmm. that's a huge part of this puzzle. And when we're looking at it, we need to educate parents. Many of these parents that are, if you will, in the failing school systems, have their children there, they're not taking an active role in their children's education mm-hmm. For multiple reasons. But some of the most abundantly noticeable reasons are they're working a lot harder. Many of the people in the African American community are working longer hours mm-hmm. And not having that time to spend with their children and to take that active role in their education. And that's a huge issue with our youth today. Bridging the gap, as you said, we have got to not say, okay, well, we're going to give you a voucher to get your kids into any school you want. We really have to attack the school system. Again, the Department of Education. And we have to institute a reliable infrastructure that holds teachers accountable for their students. What I put in my plan is that we want to pay teachers more so that they're not so worried about fighting. We want to give them, or fighting with the unions to get better education. They're not worried about the education of the students. What they're trying to do is fight for their pay, fight for their compensation. And what we can do is alleviate that by paying them what they're worth and really holding their feet to the fire in the graduation rates, in the GPAs of our students, and in the learning capacity of our students. We have to make sure that they are really implementing all of the avenues that they have available. Each child learns a different way.
30 seconds.
There's a lot of ways that they can do that, and I think that we can actually address all of those by getting the right teachers in place and making sure that they're paid what they need to be paid.
You've been listening to ACVN, the American Conservative Values Network. We've been speaking with Andrew Barnett for president, recommended by the National Frederick Douglass Society, and certainly on a tear to change Americans' virtues and values, to restore American prosperity and its morality. Thank you again for tuning in. God bless you. God love you. Have a beautiful Thanksgiving season. Bye-bye.